I was feeling so frustrated, but I didn't know what to do. I knew of nothing else.
Oh, I believe you.
And I went there out of fear because people said she'll go deaf if you don't do something. So I went back to the doctor. And he's writing the 5th course of antibiotics.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, is this what my daughter's going to be on for the rest of her life? Or when is this going to end?
Yeah,
He
feels
was-
like forever.
He was challenged by my question, so he sent me to an ear, nose and throat specialist who looked in Emma's ears, looked in her mouth. He said, the child's teething. Give her these drops to keep her eustachian tubes clear. And she recovered. So 18 months later,
I know.
with my next son,
Mm-hmm.
he got an earache. I did not go to the doctor. I did not tell anyone because I realised people start pressuring you. What I did was I went to the old lady next door. So I'm about 26, she's 85. I said, what did your mother do when you had an earache? And she said, Mum would steam up an onion on the stove, cut it in half and wrap it in a cloth and bind it to our ear. So I did. That God's plan is for us to treat our illnesses naturally, but God's plan is for us to prevent illness with the natural laws of health. The toughest experience was down in Melbourne when, unfortunately, through probably some illegal practices, we lost our health retreat. And that's when I got quite ill. That was a very, very tough time. And
I can imagine.
and you know, we were running at full capacity. We had 16 to 18 guests every program, and to be forced to close down and even
just finish
and
on the
even
spot, so to say.
even leave, you know, that was our lawyers said to us, they've broken every law in the book to get this property off you. Take them to court, but we would not do that. Well, what kept me going was we worked out, I think my daughter counted, we'd had 2,500 people come through our doors in the, I think, nearly 5 years that we were there. And we would have, in our first meal, we'd have people sitting there saying, I'm here because I want to see what you did to my girlfriend. I have never seen her look so good. And we had so many return guests. We had so many people come because they'd met other people. That was so encouraging. So we knew without a shadow of doubt that God's hand was on this work. And we also know that there is an enemy. The Bible talks about him in 1 Peter 5. Verse 8, it says, know you not that your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh around seeing whom he can devour. We also know that nothing happens without God's allowing it to happen. So we trusted that God had allowed this to happen. He'd already had a place for us up in the mountains, so we just did our health retreat there. In fact,
He
some
pulled
people,
you out and brought you to the mountain, a mountain experience.
I found a psalm that it said, we went through fire, we went through water, thou causest men to rise over our heads, but thou broughtest us out to a wealthy place. And that's what we saw a Misty Mountain was. And about that time, I'd not long given a series in New Zealand, and a Pastor Plummer, his name is, from the Bronx, was one of the speakers. And he heard the presentation I did on the mind, and as soon as I'd finished, he said, will you come to the Bronx and teach? And I said, I will seriously consider that. Now, because we weren't quite ready to start programs, I had lost a lot of weight and got quite fatigued through the whole process, that my husband agreed. He said, yes, we'll send you to the Bronx for 2 months. So in 2004, I went to the Bronx for 2 months. And it was such a blessing because my husband always says he has thick skin. People would ring him up and saying, you're a thief, you know, there are a lot of bad rumours going round about us. And whenever he'd tell me, I'd think, that's on another planet. I'm on another planet here in the Bronx. It was a 450 person church, and they were mostly Jamaicans, and they have such a wonderful sense of humour. There were 5 choirs in the church, and I must say, yes, God took me from a rainforest into the Bronx, but it was a real healing balm for me. And when I spoke to the Jamaicans, the people in the Bronx, they were so animated. They would say, "Lord, have mercy. Say it like it is, sister." Do you know that it just brought me out of my shyness to have this vibrant reaction as I spoke? And then I went back to Misty Mountain, and by then we started programs. And we went very well there. In fact, we got to full capacity, and we could take no more guests, so Michael started looking for another property. So we found the property where we have a retreat now, and it was an Aboriginal boarding school. And it had gone into great debt. It was $4.5 million in debt. We bought it off the receivers. The houses were in a very bad state of disrepair. But little by little, we have built it up. And we're 1 hour closer to town. We're not as hard to access. And up to before COVID hit and everything's been affected, we were averaging 12 to 14 guests every week. So that's 3 weeks a month. So little by little we built up again.
Now you shared with us a bit about the toughest experience. Is there also a most encouraging and beautiful experience that you would say, that one really encouraged me so much that I would love to share?
Well, I have to tell you there are hundreds, which is very nice, but I can think of one of a man who came with prostate cancer. And he was a strawberry farmer, and we assessed that it was exposure to chemicals that had contributed to it. He was not interested in really coming to our health retreat, but his wife and his daughter were. He was about mid-50s. His wife was early 50s. His daughter was late 20s. They were so keen. They'd been watching my lectures on YouTube. But he was compliant. He did everything we advised, and they were there 2 weeks. And then they went home, and everything I suggested to him, he said, "Oh, I suppose so. Oh, if you say so." And his wife and daughter would say, "He'll do it. He'll do it." He emailed me 3 months later. He said, "I've just had a result of my recent tests and I'm cancer-free."
Amen.
Now he's interested. Now he's interested, So that was really nice. And it also shows that God even blessed this man who wasn't that interested because of his very enthusiastic wife and daughter.